Welcome to the Survivor's Chair podcast, a podcast where we break down our stories and our trauma, understanding how they have impacted our career and our life. This is a place where we break free from shame, own our truth, and step into our power, one story at a time. Hi, I'm Kim, an adoptee, a former foster youth, hairstylist, salon owner, breast cancer, and complex trauma survivor. So join us, pull up a chair, in this no sugarcoating, no holding back, honest conversation about healing and success. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 9 of the Survivor's Chair podcast. I am your host, Kim Russell. Last week, I talked about boundaries, and I talked about boundaries because that is one of the classes that I'll be doing at the Pennsylvania Beauty Pros Expo, which is coming up May 18th and 19th. The other class I'm having is on charging your worth, and both of these classes are based on how trauma plays in all of those things, how our trauma loop, as I call it, gets in the way and kind of skews our beliefs about ourselves. And so today I thought, well, we did boundaries. Let's do charging your worth, and let's talk about how money and trauma plays into our life and into our success and happiness and all of those things. I hope you're joining me at the Pennsylvania Beauty Pros Expo. It's only in a couple weeks. I hope you have your ticket. If you're in the beauty industry, come along, join me. It's going to be fun. Okay, so charging your worth. Why does charging your worth feel hard? Why do you second guess yourself when you have to charge somebody for your services? There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there, whether you're a salon owner or a service-based entrepreneur. If you have money stuff that's swirling around in your head that you are not worthy of what you're doing, it is going to get in the way. And the thing to remember is that charging your worth or charging for your services, it's not about the money or the numbers. It's about how you feel about yourself on the inside. Everything starts on the inside and works its way out, right? So charging your worth is very emotional because it shines on these lights or these pieces of us where we question, am I enough? Yes, you are. Am I enough for the world is basically what you're saying. And there's things like I'm not smart enough, which is my thing that plays in. And I think that is becoming a hairdresser. My early childhood trauma, of course, and then deciding to be a hairdresser, which there wasn't anybody out there who said that's a great career choice. I was beaten down on every corner. I was not college material. I had to go into hairdressing. I was too stupid. It was the last choice career for me. I didn't have any other options. It was basically what people said. And a lot of people were like, oh, isn't that cute? You get to play with hair all day. I actually had somebody say to me, well, you probably find a good man that will support you. So basically, my whole entire career as a hairdresser was to prove the world wrong. And, when you go into trauma and hyper independence and all of those things, it was a good setup to be an entrepreneur. And I went on to open my salon at 25 and do things very different, which was to provide benefits and education. I wanted to create a career and not just a job. I dedicated my early years especially into training new stylists. I only hired from the local vocational school, which nobody was doing back then. It was unheard of because people didn't want to pay. I wanted to create opportunities that weren't there for me, even though I talk about my first job in my book, which, gosh, it is going to be ready at some point, about my first boss and what an influence she was on my life. I went on this mission to do things differently to prove that I had a worthy career and it's worthy for anybody. And let me tell you, it was the best choice I ever made. I loved it. I still love it. The business was very successful and my stylists were successful. My employees were successful. And I've had people say to me, well, when you own it, it's different. No, I wanted to make sure that everybody was successful or they at least had the tools to be successful. Because success is different for everybody, and some people choose to use the tools and some people choose not to. That was a learning experience in my business. Not everybody wanted what I wanted. Some people were happy getting by. I had to get comfortable with that. So success is different for everybody. And I think success has changed shape over the years too. And I'm really happy about that because it's not that grind and hustle that it was when I started, which is amazing. My hustle was part of a scarcity mindset. Scarcity mindset is that feeling that you're just never going to have enough. It doesn't matter how much money you make, you're always going to go without. And that's what I felt like. If I didn't save every penny, if I didn't work 12 hours a day, then what would I do? I would never have enough. I would always be poor and struggling. So there's kind of some sayings, and I am guilty of these sayings that we say when we have money issues, which is one of the things that I say all the time is I just want to help people. And I really genuinely do want to help people, but there is probably some underlying money stuff that's still there for me that I need to keep working on. One of the things that I did in my business too, which I've mentioned in previous podcasts, is I undercharged for my services, which made me have to work 12, 14 hours a day to live. And that was to get by. I thought I had to give extreme discounts to be liked. And if I didn't give these discounts, then people wouldn't like me and customers would leave. Well, of course they would, because 99.9% of the people were there for the discount. Even though I was providing a great service, they didn't see the value in my services because I didn't see the value in my services. So once I saw the value in my services and charged appropriately, a lot of those people left, and that was fine. Once you see the value in what you have to offer, and once you believe in yourself and that value, your knowledge, your expertise, the right people sit in your chair. Whatever service that you do or whatever you're offering, the right people that are there. So I would give these discounts, and in my head I'd be like, well, they can't afford it, and it's no big deal. I can give up that portion of my pay so that they're comfortable. And I had no idea what their financial situation was. But in my head, I just assumed when I would train my stylists and they would say things like that. And I would say, we don't know what anybody's financial situation is. You can have people that complain about money all the time because that's their money issue, but they get gads of it in the bank. You just don't know. It's not our job to sort out people's money. It's not our job to say they can't afford it. That's their choice, not yours. If they're spending their money for your service and they can't afford it, that's personal stuff. That has nothing to do with us. We're just there providing a service. And if they're complaining about your price while they're there, that has nothing to do with you. I am so confident in my pricing now that it doesn't waver for a second if somebody wants to challenge me on it, because I see the value in what I do and the expertise and the knowledge that I bring to my services. So when somebody's challenging you or they're asking you for a discount or it has nothing to do with you. Nothing, and everything to do with them. When we're saying things like, I just want to help or they can't afford it, things that we're saying is I'm scared to be rejected. I'm afraid to be seen greedy or selfish. You don't deserve to make a living. And as hairdressers, there's a lot of people out there who don't see the value in what we do because they can do it themselves. They can go to CVS and get a box of color. Of course they can, and that's their choice. But the education and the knowledge that we have, and that, I'm going to say I have probably paid over $200,000 extra for my education in my craft. And I know that you can't take one box of color off the shelf. When I color somebody's hair, there's 2, 3, 4 different colors in there because I know what I have to do to counteract. Anyways, that's a whole other thing, but it's a choice. People can choose to do that. Absolutely. So if we are asking for money, sometimes we can feel like we're greedy. And I've had people say, how dare I charge what I charge? Like, how dare I? Like, for some reason, it's like ballsy of me to charge for my knowledge, expertise. Having to prove that you have value is really exhausting. And in the hairdressing world, we've all done it for a lot of years, especially when I started 40 years ago. And all right, so I'm going to go back a little bit. So the way that we feel about money today most likely started long before you even started earning a paycheck. Like how we grow up with money, what was told to us about money, how we experienced money. There's a lot of things people say like that she's a rich bitch. That person has a lot of money, they're an asshole. Like if you've taught those things, then you believe on a subconscious level that you can't have money because you're going to be a bitch and you're going to be an asshole. I know you don't probably think that or aware of it, but your subconscious is always playing these little games in the back of your mind. How we experienced money as a child, for me, it was we never had any money. Everything was a challenge. I have a story in my book. I talk about grapes. Every time I went to the grocery store, can we get some grapes? No, not this week. They're too expensive. And all I wanted to do in my life was get to a place where I could buy the freaking grapes and not worry about it. For me, it was like just this poverty and struggle and never having enough money and bills not getting paid and overextension of the finances. And so we carry this stuff around us like unconsciously into our lives, into our business, into our relationships. It shapes us and how we show up in our careers and how we allow ourselves to receive money. This stuff can be linked to fear, shame, survival. For me, it was total survival. And it just shows up as these behaviors in our career that we run with. One of the things for me was I was very uncomfortable with success. I didn't want to be the owner. I wanted to be your average Joe. I didn't want to be anything special. I never charged more than not never, but I did eventually charge more than my employees. It didn't matter what level they were at. If they were right out of school, they were charging the same thing as me. And trust me, mine were prices were very low. And it took me a lot of years to realize that I have the experience behind me and that is worth something than when you're just starting out. So I did readjust that as the years went on. But this stuff just played in the background in my head. And, I worked all these hours trying to make ends meet and saving every penny because I was so afraid that if I spent anything, then I was never going to get it back again. Money our money wounds, shall we say. They're not a reflection of our skill or talent. These money wounds are just a reflection of what we were taught, what we saw, and the environments that we lived in. And like I say about anything that was learned can be unlearned. That story of being unworthy or not worth your services, it's not the story that you have to live at all. So we went through a couple of things already that I definitely did with my money stuff. And I'm going to go over some behaviors that might be linked to your own personal money story. First one is emotional discounting. And I think that those of us who are entrepreneurs that have trauma, that have issues around money, that's like first and foremost, probably the most common. And we offer lower prices or extra time even. It might take an hour to do somebody's hair, but sometimes it takes an hour and 15 minutes. And it is appropriate to charge for that. And I had a conversation with my niece-in-law, I hope she's listening, about having early meetings. Of course you can have early meetings with your customers. Those early meetings are not within your regular hours. That should be a separate price. You are giving up your personal time to accommodate them. That is an extra charge. It doesn't have to be through the roof, but it's not our job to just willy-nilly our hours and be available 24/7 or 9 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock in the morning. Even if you don't have so-called office hours, it's very important to put hours in as a boundary, which goes from the last podcast. It's your choice to go in and out of those hours if you want to, not because somebody else demands it. And I did a lot of that. Came in early, stayed late, came in on Sundays, Mondays, worked on my day off. And a lot of times I was resentful because I didn't know how to say no. Because if I did say no, then they wouldn't like me, all of that, or that would lose a client. And like I said, you only lose that client when you stop accommodating their lack of boundaries. So emotional discounting, for us, it was like, well, how much is it for a trim? And we charge the same amount. It's the same process and the same amount of time, whether you want a half an inch off, a quarter of an inch off, or 5 inches off. It's the same process. The only time it's probably going to be different is if you have more hair than the time allowed me to do your hair in, or it's such a intense style change that it's gonna take more time. With that, it's gonna cost more money because it's gonna take me more time. Another thing in the hairdressing world, if you're in my world, is it's gonna be pricey. So you throw in a free toner or a free conditioning treatment because you want them to feel like they're getting what their service is, the value. When the value is there, because they're getting the service that they asked for and wanted, but you are uncomfortable with the price. So you start throwing in all these freebies. Another thing is uncomfortable talking about money. And yes, money can be very uncomfortable to talk about in life, relationships, business, all of the above. One of the big things in our industry is not being clear about what it's going to cost somebody when they come in. Having a consultation and explaining to them how much it's going to cost. And then they get to the desk, they're sticker shocked, but you have already run away from the desk and let the receptionist take care of it because you are so uncomfortable. So you book it to the back room before they can question anything. But not being honest with them in the beginning, and I'm so guilty of all of these over the years. So if you're doing it, don't feel bad. Again, our behaviors are there and it's becoming aware of them. That's really important. And then trying to make those small changes. But yeah, when you're boogieing to the back room because you're so uncomfortable at what it's going to cost the person, you're avoiding the hard conversations. It's really important to let people know upfront how much something is going to cost. Maybe you don't pay your bills. Maybe you delay in paying your bills, or people don't show up, right? In our business, they don't show up. Our time is our money, or if they cancel the last minute, we can't fill that space in. And I know for me, my books, I always had a wait list, cancellation list. And if somebody didn't show up last minute, I couldn't call somebody in 5 minutes and say, come over and fill that. That's just a lost opportunity for me. So our industry is better about cancellation policies and whatnot, but it's really important to enforce your policies, whatever that is. If you have meetings booked and people don't show up for your meetings, I mean, there's got to be something. You've taken an hour out of your day and you're sitting on Zoom or whatever, and 15 minutes goes by and they haven't shown up yet. They're probably not going to show up. So there's got to be some kind of compensation for your time. And I already talked about believing people who have money are jerks. A lot of people carry that belief that money makes people selfish or arrogant. It's subconsciously distancing yourself from wealth. That's all you're doing subconsciously. You don't even know you're doing it. And we talked about underpricing services. Even when you've grown your skill and you've done everything, you've gone to classes, you've done all the things, you feel anxious telling people how much it's going to cost. You don't want to sound too expensive. You're rehearsing how to say it. You have this fear of being too expensive. So you just want to be this discounted price so that people won't question you and they'll just keep coming back. You tell yourself it's better than losing people than being too expensive. And no, that's, and that goes into the next one, which is you're afraid people are going to leave. But people who are there because they value your service and what you do will be there. People who don't value your service will not be there. But you first have to value your service. You have to see the value in what you have to offer. And then other people will see the value in that. And we talked about overworking, squeezing people in, or not having those set hours, overgiving. Talked about that. I was an overgiver in my personal life and in my business. And I felt like that was my job. It was my job to make sure everybody had what they needed. If I made the money and I had the money, there was something inside me that felt like it belonged to somebody else. So I always had to give it away. I had no problem going out and spending $1,000 on somebody else, but I couldn't do it for myself. I would, have that little spurt and I'd be like, oh, I need some new clothes. And I would go into Marshalls or TJ Maxx and I'd roam around and I'd have all these clothes in a carriage. And then at the last minute, I would say, do I really need these? I don't think I really need these. And I would leave the cart and the clothes and I would leave. It was so hard for me to spend money on myself, but it was so much easier for me to buy for other people. Again, I did not feel worthy of it. And if I gave, then people would like me. That ties into overindulging, like that shame that's around treating yourself, something that's not responsibility. I had a lot of trouble with that. It wasn't the responsible thing to do. Getting a facial was not the responsible thing to do. I should tuck that away, but I could go out and get a gift certificate for somebody else for a facial and tell them that they deserved it and they were worthy of it. If I did it for myself, I just felt selfish. That goes into the scarcity mindset, feeling like you can't celebrate successes. I would downplay everything. Getting a car. I drove my car. I had it for 18 years, had 184,000 miles on it. Had no air conditioning. One of my favorite stories is driving in the summertime and being on the phone. Didn't have Bluetooth or anything like that. It was so old. And I had to have the windows up so I could hear. And I would have my phone to my ear back when we could do that. And I would be sweating so much that my phone would just be sliding down my face. But I didn't get a new car, even though I could have. And when I did get a new car, I got a Lexus. And now in my mind, that was only for rich people. Rich people got Lexuses, not me. And I felt very, very uncomfortable. Now I've had that car for 11 years now. So when I first got it, I was super uncomfortable. I didn't even want to tell people what I got. They would say, "What did you get?" And I would just say a GX 460. And they'd say, "Well, what is that?" And I'd say, "Oh, it's a Lexus." And I would see some people change the way they looked at me, like, "Oh, must be nice." I'm going to talk about that statement for a second because I can't tell you how many times people have said that to me, and that is their own issues with money and their worth. Must be nice to go on vacation. Must be nice. And you know what? It is nice. That's what I tell people now. Yeah, it's nice. Or the other thing. You're so lucky. I'm going to take a deep breath on that one. Lucky? No. Nope. A lot of hard work? Yep. And people don't like it when you say that to them. No, you're just lucky. Nope. Luck has nothing to do with it. It's all about hard work. So I do correct people when they say that to me now. I don't know if it does any good, but I do. I do correct them. So here's a little homework for you, shall we say? Which is a page that I have for the class when I go to Pennsylvania. And if you can answer some of these questions, but answer them with compassion and not criticism, because that's the one thing. We are not here to feel bad or feel shame about how we feel and how we deal with money and our finances, because we are here to learn. That's it. We're here to learn. We're here to become aware and to change our behaviors the best that we possibly can. There is no shame or judgment on this podcast ever. So, when you're charging for your services, one of the questions is, why do I feel bad about charging my services? And how does it feel in your body? I'm going to constantly talk about your body. How does it feel in your body? Why do you feel bad about charging your services? If you dig, like everything you do, you got to dig deep and really get to that feeling or emotion behind it. And that's what I talk about, getting to the root. It's about getting to the root. What happens when somebody says, "How much is that?" Anybody ever have that moment where they wanted to throw up and they didn't want to say it? No receptionist was at the front desk at the time and you had to do it yourself. Did you want to throw up? Why? Again, where does it feel in your body? What is the story that plays in your head when that person is asking you how much and it's a big ticket? What is that story in your head? I'm not worthy. Anybody do this at their front desk? It's $330 in your head and you're like, "You know what? I'm just going to charge them $230. That sounds more reasonable. That sounds like something they can afford, even though your service is $330. And the time that you took and the products that you used and the knowledge that you have and the expertise, all of it. But then you get to the desk and you undercharge. So what's that story in your head? You're not worthy of that. How does it feel when you receive the money? Do you feel proud? Do you feel uncomfortable? Or do you feel guilty? For me, it was uncomfortable and guilt. There was never a proud. Now it's proud. But before then, it was not like that. And again, like I say about everything, do I know the story to be true? Do I have the facts to back it up? So when I feel unworthy, do I know that to be true? And do I have the facts to back it up? When I feel like I'm being greedy, do I know the story to be true? Or do I have the facts to back it up? It's always no. It's always no. Whatever's running through my brain and my body is always fear-based. Or it's somebody else's story that I'm carrying around. It's our parents' story, our grandparents' story. My grandmother, she would have one pea left and she would wrap that pea up and she would put it in the fridge and save it. She is a product of the Depression. I lived with my grandmother, so there was that. And then, my parents had so many money problems, always overextending themselves, always buying things that they couldn't afford, never budgeting or balancing. And they had this, mentality that of I deserve it. Like, that's another kind of financial thing that if you grew up when you didn't have enough, sometimes you go the other way and you're like, I deserve it. And I don't care if I have the money for it or not, I'm just going to buy it. And then it throws you into a financial strain. So it could be somebody else's story that you're carrying around. And it's important to know who it is, where it comes from, and what their beliefs around money were. So those are just a few questions that you can ask yourself. So how do we build a new relationship with money? How do we start? How do we do that? So it's awareness, right? It's awareness of how we feel, the story that's running in the back of our brain, that subconscious story that we believe to be true. And then you can start recognizing patterns, habits, emotions that come up around money without judgment. Again, there's never any judgment. Are you always saying, I can't afford that, even though you can? Are you mad at people who have money? For me, money always played a huge role in security for me, which is why I never spent any money, because I was the one that had to take care of myself, and I was the one that had to make sure that I had enough money. And working, making money, having money come in made me feel secure in my life. And when that got bumpy, say like with my cancer diagnosis and I couldn't work, that sends me into pure panic. So I always have to like dig like, where is this coming from? Am I going to run out of money? I'm not going to run out of money. You're going to be fine. It's just talking yourself off the ledge and and finding out where it all began. So get curious about where it began. Did it begin in your childhood? Did something happen? Threw it off. So recognizing your patterns, so becoming aware of your patterns, getting curious about where they began. What's one small thing that you can shift today to build like a healthier, more compassionate relationship with money? And remember, it took years to get to where you are, and you're never going to undo where you are now in a week, in a month, in a year. Give yourself some grace. Take your time and make sure you're showing yourself love and kindness all the way. Because it's not about the numbers. It's about honoring yourself and understanding that you are enough and your work is enough and you are worthy of everything that comes your way. Everything. I have some affirmations that you can say to yourself. And I know it sounds corny to a lot of people. And even I thought it was a little corny, but once I really believed that we can reprogram our brain, neuroplasticity, the more we do it, the more we will change the way we think. So here are a few. I am safe to receive abundance. I honor the time, energy, and skill I bring to my work. It is not selfish to be well compensated. This one always strikes me because there are people that in other professions where they know they're worthy of a raise. It's time for them to get a raise. And they set up a meeting with their boss and they go in and it's time for a raise. They get a review. But in the hairdressing world, when you go up on your prices, it is a lot of times taken as an attack. And that's when people have to look at their own money stuff because they don't see the value in what you do. So it's a different world out there when people feel and know that they deserve a raise and the work that they're putting in and the knowledge and their skill and the years that they have in their company, but they don't see that same value in the hairdressing world. And, that's slowly changing, but I'm hoping that gets better. So some more affirmation. I trust myself to manage money wisely and with love. Learning how to manage your money and budget. If you didn't have it when you were younger, I had to learn that. And I share that knowledge with anybody I possibly can when I get the opportunity. And when I hired my young stylists from school, that's the one thing we did every year. We sat down and we picked out goals. And a lot of the times it was their first paycheck and their goal was to get a car. So I would teach them how to budget, how to save, and put the money away, and they'd get a car. It was fabulous. I watched them get cars and then houses and whatever. It was so fulfilling. I had to learn it because my parents weren't budgeting. I can tell you that much. And my worth is not determined by my income. People think if they make X amount of dollars, then they're going to feel worthy, but they haven't done the deep work on the inside. So it doesn't matter what goal you meet as far as your income, if you haven't worked on the inside, you're not gonna feel worthy. And then again, not feeling any guilt around charging for your services, your time and your expertise and your knowledge. So you release that guilt about charging for your services. It's safe for me to succeed, grow, and thrive. It's okay. It's not a bad thing. I can be generous and still prioritize my own financial well-being. Never jeopardize your own financial well-being to give. Every time I honor my rates, I honor my journey and my future. Those are some money affirmations. I feel like most of us out there have some money stuff. Either we spend too much, we don't spend anything, we give too much, we don't give anything. We have expectations that somebody else should give it to us. And we have expectations that we have to give it away. Like I said in the beginning, it starts early and it can keep growing. These money issues, these loops, along with our trauma and what comes along with that, it can just grow over time. So again, give yourself some grace, show yourself some love. And I know that you are worthy of everything that comes your way. And I will leave you on that note. And I want to thank you so much for being here and supporting the Survivor Chair podcast. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in my classes. And I'm looking forward to the discussions that we have around these two topics of boundaries and money. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time on the Survivor's Chair podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Survivor's Chair podcast. You can head over to my website at www.kimrussellpro.com. That's KIMRUSSELLPRO.com. You can catch up on my blog, or you can follow me on social, on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok. All the links will be in the show notes, and I will see you next time in the Survivor's Chair.